15, we're going to begin the budget meeting. Heather, you're going to take control from here. First up will be the clerk's office. Just lead us to the right page, please. Thank you.
Yes, we're going to start on page 13.
I will. This is Andrew Costella. He's the new deputy city
Hi,
clerk.
Andrew. Nice to meet you.
His first day today.
So don't worry about it.
They're all on that side of the room.
So Melissa kind of manages two cost centers, the clerk and the common council. And so the first one is on page 13. And let me pull up, the payroll is on page 55 and 57. Let's see, actually 55 for common council. Yes. Nothing changed here that you aren't already aware of. The 3% or the 6% for the common council and the 3% for the secretary of the common council. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, anything unique this year. I know that we're paying, or you're doing the Facebook, right? That's something you took on?
Yep, doing Facebook, the e-codes, and I'm currently working on the books for the common council proceedings, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, so 20, I have not started 18 and 19, just with the loss of my deputy and his first day, so we're training him. But I do have 2020 and 2021 completed. I'm just gonna go over it again before I actually print and bind and pass out. And 2022 I'm working on as we go, so.
And as you may recall from last year, one of the things that Melissa took on, which we recognized during COVID, is it was quite an expense and quite a time commitment to put together those big bound books, and it was just unnecessary. We can bind stuff our stuff ourselves. So she took that up, and when we get to the clerk's cost center, you see the salaries increasing slightly, and that was because she took on these additional duties. So we've seen some drop in costs in some places and some increase in payroll in others.
Yeah, I know one question. Just get it out on record. I know, Melissa, we talked earlier, that temporary part-time secretary, the reason why the wage went that high is because you're going to work more hours? Is that what it
Yes,
is?
so.
It won't be part-time?
Yep, so our temporary right now,
He's
We're
on,
on
he's
57.
on page 57
Yeah.
under clerk.
Yep, clerk's wages, I see it.
yep, so the temporary employee that I have right now, she works 3.5 hours a day, so 10 to 1:30, total of 15,000 for the year. I may possibly have a couple people retiring within the year and a half, so I want to get her on board full-time. So, it would be at what I put in there was $16.48 an hour for a total of 30,000 for the year. It still, to me, is not.
$21.97 per hour.
That is at 15, a total of 15,000 for the year. So we would lower the hourly
Okay.
rate for her to be full-time.
Just one question. We used to get, we know we got those beautiful legislative books, which well done, of course. But we used to get E&A books.
Yeah, so let's see, I think it's 17, it's the
When was the
E&A,
last time we got those now?
the E&A books for 2018, 2019.
Are you serious?
We're not done.
Wow.
So really, I have 18, 19 of common council proceedings and the E&A, so it's a lot. It's a lot, and I have to go through someone else's files to kind of put it all together. So I
Can I
have,
ask, all these books that you went through these years, how did they not get done? Like, nobody followed up and checked or know what?
Absent, if you don't see them, maybe.
Yeah, but every budget season, did somebody ask where the books are?
I don't know, I asked. So.
Well, there was such a big time commitment, I'm not making excuses, but there was a major time commitment, and every time the question was asked, it's that we're working on them. So, I mean, that's what the.
and that was prior to me, so I'm gonna try to, once I get him fully trained, just give me a little time. Once he's fully trained, I'll eventually catch
She's
up.
got a lot to
Right.
overcome right now.
Yeah.
She has. All right, thank you.
Those are enormously useful references.
Yes. Yeah, they're gonna be much cleaner. I mean, I think I showed some of the council members, but they're much cleaner. So, I mean, it's just every page is a legislation that's certified. So just copy the page and you're good to go.
I'm good, Cheech.
Any questions? Anybody else?
Yeah, so we're looking at page, now your salaries are on 57, we're also looking at page 13, right, just like, I heard you say page 13.
That's the whole council.
Yeah, and then
do have something, because I think that the aspect when it comes to being a council person, there is little discretionary funds for important things I think for the district that should be added. For example, notifying constituents of different things, $300 doesn't sufficiently do that. So I do think though there should be some sort of discretionary funding. That way, if there are things in our district that we feel are important and necessary that we want to support, right, from an official capacity, or certainly we can't duplicate Joe Griffel or Buttonshine with how they send out mail with important city information. But certain things like that, I mean, I would think it's necessary. We're putting up big, apartments in Cornhill and other places. Having a sort of discretionary budget to be able to notify constituents about what's happening pertinent to the district, I think would be helpful.
We used to actually have that.
Right, yes.
We did, I mean, then when the budget hit, we cut everything out of our budget.
Yeah, so I would be interested maybe in the postage to maybe add 1,000 per district or a couple hundred per district to allow the council person to have that funding to be able to do those types of things.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly to get that information out. But I also know that she has her budget to work within, right? So if there's anything that we do need in the future, okay, and it's outside her budget, we can go to Heather and ask her, say, Heather, I need this, I need that, I need mailings, let alone the letter, okay? We need the letter, we need the printing of the letter, and we need the letter itself, and we need the stamp. So all those things cost more, maybe more than just postage. So say you want to do that project, say you want to get an idea, you want to do 100 foot away from there. First off, see how many people you want to mail it to. Say you've got 400 people that you want to mail it to. Say, Heather, I need this allocated
We can
for
do a
the funds for
transfer.
her, and we can
Yeah.
do a transfer.
Yeah.
Or you could
Get
just
it done.
transfer $9,000 into the budget line now.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of putting something into the.
Well, if you put it in a budget line now, you may not use it.
I'll use
It's a good idea.
So we'll work on but I do want, that would be my amendment, but I'll work with you about something that's feasible, not unnecessary.
But I would just write, there's gotta be legislation to it
Right.
as well, because you can't just
Put
mail
in,
out stuff
right.
for your political purposes as
Right,
well.
sure.
So if you're doing something like that, it would coincide with
We
that.
want-
Of course, the administration would assist, because the administration's going to have their hands in the project.
You would want us to be like, yeah, very careful, that it's not political, that it goes to all residents of the ward, not some residents of the ward. There'd be some way, there'd be various things like that.
They do
Make
it,
sure
that's
that-
right. They do it anyways with codes.
Right.
So when there's a codes thing, they want the area, be notified to do the same thing with codes. So basically, the system's already there, they just
So
have
when,
to ask them.
so when you all had it, is that similar to how, were the guidelines that you all utilized, or was it just?
Well, really, the codes department kind of took over all of our mailings and stuff like that for codes and zoning and things like that. I mean, that was part of the ordinance that was passed.
Did a
but
lot of
not-
notifications for those.
But we also had a secretary for the common council. I mean, I never was on the council when they had it, but they used to like search legislation, would send things out, notifications, stuff like that.
Can you give us an example of something that you would have, that a council member would have used that?
For example, like the North Utica's 100th anniversary, when they had the 100th anniversary, instead of using my own personal money or getting donations, maybe that was something that the city could have utilized to send out notices to every resident in North Utica to let them know, stuff like that. Little things like that, so.
All right, anything else?
I do have a couple of things for Melissa. I know we had this discussion, especially with the hospital coming downtown, that the city clerk's office is going to take on major responsibility of birth certificates, death certificates, so on and so forth. With that increase with the hospital coming, we're basically taking everything from New Hartford now and moving it to the city of Utica. Obviously, you can pay for a birth certificate. That would obviously generate revenue for the city, but I think as our legislative body and responsibility to the city clerk's office, we have to look into possibly adding people to her budget to be able to help her along those lines.
Just a note to that, the hospital doesn't intend to open until, they're scheduled to open in October of 2024.
Right, right.
So it'll be-
But you
You
also
have
want to
time.
train somebody so that,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, to get somebody in, at least if we know there's a deadline, maybe not this budget year, obviously, but definitely it's something that we gotta talk about for next budget
Yeah,
year.
I agree.
So,
Yep, I agree, definitely by next.
I mean, we can always talk to New
Actually,
Hartford.
Hartford, they have a part-timer that does it. so.
Yeah, she does, she's out there all by
She is,
herself.
and
but-
she's not stressed out, so.
Yeah.
I mean, like New Hartford
She
right now,
lives
I think
outside
they
the
do
city.
like,
No gray hair, she can work.
there's a secret to
Any,
that.
any other questions?
New Hartford, right now, they do, their births are up to 2,000 for the year. So, I mean, well,
Do we do any?
And guess what?
Do we, nobody's born trainees?
No, unless they were prior.
yeah, unless they're born
They're
prior, we're
prior,
putting
so
out
hopefully-
older birth certificates.
Okay,
But like our deaths for 2021 were about 1,000.
okay.
That was in 2021. And now we're up to like 200 right now. So between that and the births coming.
In New Hartford, that's not an accurate number because they deliver very minimal babies there. I know that because most of the pediatricians are gone from there. So there's a lot going to Rome.
Right.
There's a lot going out of Syracuse.
So like 2021, that was like their number between 1,500, 2,000.
So there'll be a
Yeah, but
lot.
what-
So while Melissa's here, still here, I just wanted to kind of, if we could take a moment to look at page 4. 4 and page 7, those are her revenues. So she and I work together, in just chatting about, we take a look at historicals because not too many of the fees change from year to year. And so I don't know if any of you had any questions for her as it relates to the revenues related, because there's quite a bit of money that comes in from her office.
When you get some time, check other municipalities, make sure our fee schedule is in compliance.
But we did just
We,
pass,
yeah, we just did the,
like 2 days, 2
The
weeks
Well,
ago.
births.
any other ones in the
Yeah.
future, you
Okay.
notify us as soon as possible.
okay,
Okay. All
Thank you
set.
very
Good.
much.
all right.
Drew
Thank you.
Costello, right? Andrew Costello?
Yes.
Is our new
Andrew,
Congratulations.
deputy clerk. I happen to know him, so watch out.
I like it.
Thank you, guys.
Melissa, send us his contact information.
That's-
Yes, I know.
So Lori Robel is here for civil service. She also manages the mail and human resources. The only big difference in civil service this year, you see an increase under the salary lines. This year, the mayor worked with Lori, and they've hired an additional position. The payroll page is page 57, I think. Take a look here. And Lori can explain to you what this additional person in her office is doing. She had been utilizing part-time labor, and she needed additional staffing. But the position went from, page 57? Yes, a provisional administrative aide. And that's on page 57.
49,013.
Do they live in Utica?
She doesn't.
Thank you, Lord, for sticking to your.
And I'm sure everybody understands too, that we don't just cover civil service for the city of Utica. We also, per New York State education law, are required to do everything we do for the city, for the Utica City School District and the Municipal Housing Authority. So the Utica City School District actually pays half of my salary and half of Jennifer's salary. We maintain all their employee roster cards, their personnel files. We do all their exam administration, so they do pay actually 50% of our budget.
Your cost effective.
Yes.
How many of those civil services do you do for the school?
For the school, believe it or not, we do more for the school than we do for the city.
Okay.
Yeah, they've got a lot of competitive titles, typist, clerical. I mean, most of their positions are competitive.
Okay.
How's your cost per client? Are you in compliance with what you feel that's reasonable when they need assistance on each and every individual?
I
Or
think
do you just
so.
charge them a fixed rate, charge this one fixed rate, that one fixed rate?
You mean as far as exams?
Yes.
We do $50 for uniform, which is anything for police or fire, and we do $25 for everything else, and that covers the monitors, we usually give the exams here unless there's more than 25 people. So that saves us money, and the school district lets us use their buildings for larger exams. So there's not a fee for that, so really it's just for monitors. But I think, and I can put something together for you, but I think that we're right on track. It's not costing us anymore to administer exams, we're actually making some money off of it. And the state takes half of everything we charge to rate the papers too. So
Right.
if we charge 50, they take 25.
So our fee schedule, you think is reasonable?
I think it's good.
Yeah. And you do exempt some people if they're financially?
Yes, if they're on
Yeah,
unemployment,
hardship.
they're head of household, or if they're on public assistance, they can apply for a fee waiver. Then the state doesn't charge us.
That's a good
And
thing.
is there a discount for City of Utica residents to take? the
There is
exam?
not,
I thought, did we use it, or did we just change it?
not that I know
I thought we did one for, I thought we did
of.
one for.
Yeah, I don't recall there ever being one.
How many firefighters did we get to sign up for the test that's
We
coming
have
up?
110 total.
That signed up?
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Yep.
Too
Not
bad,
bad.
it was like 18 now.
I know, I saw that, I gave that to Sonny. And that's the state law, 19 to take it, 20 to be appointed, it's only for police and fire.
He's got to love it. He's got to love it. That's what you're going to do.
If he gives it again next year he'll be all set.
He's like a Superman.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions? Pretty much straightforward, right? Okay,
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, Heather.
Next up is Crystal Curley. Crystal Curley was appointed by the mayor last year. Chris Pastorelli retired. She's still working part-time for us as a transition with Crystal. Crystal came to us from RCIL. We were pretty excited to get her, so I don't know if you want to tell a little bit about yourself before we get into question and answer. By the way, her budget starts on page 86.
Thank you for having me, everyone. It's nice to meet you, and I'm happy to become familiarized with the common council, being new here. I started March 1st of 2021, so tomorrow is my year anniversary with the city. And I did come from administering federal grant programs at the local level. That's my background and experience. I came from the nonprofit sector, and I'm excited to be here. So if you look at the City of Utica budget for the Section 8 voucher program, you'll see some proposals and changes here, but overall, I just want to give you some background on the program. Right now, we are actually providing vouchers to about 1,300 Utica residents with an average of $464 a month. $464 a month in per unit cost. That doesn't mean some subsidies, we are paying full amount of subsidies depending on somebody's income.
Can you repeat that from the beginning? I'm sorry.
Sure. Okay, so I just wanted to give you some background on the program. We are actually providing resources in subsidies for 1,300 participants right now. We expanded beyond the Section 8 voucher program, the Housing Choice Voucher Program is what it's called now. We run a family self-sufficiency program, a family unification program. We run a emergency housing voucher program. So we've really expanded our services and our voucher coverage in the city of Utica to help our residents. That being said, we provide rental payments to over 600 landlords in the city of Utica. And our average monthly subsidy payments to all of those landlords has been averaging about $550,000 a month. Last year, that came in over $6,200,000 to the landlords in the city of Utica. And we continue to try to find mechanisms and implement new things to really help our city landlords through the pandemic. We also want to help our participants on the programs become more self-sufficient, have upward social mobility. And those are some of the mechanisms that I've been applying since I've started. Our entire department right now is going through a huge transition. Our previous administrator has been here for, I would say, over 35 years at this point. And a lot of the staff in our department are approaching their 30th to 35th year. I'm anticipating a lot of retirements to come. In the meantime, I'm trying to transition new staff in and get them trained in anticipation of those retirements. And I would say in the next 4 years, we are going to be an entirely new department here. Is the previous generation that was working in our department is now going to be all up for retirement. So that has caused me some interesting dynamics up in Section 8. Being a new administrator for the first year, I've spent majority of my time trying to recruit and hire. I've worked with Sonia Martinez at the Latino Association. I've worked with Encompass Interpreters, trying to get a diverse staff in to reflect the population we're serving. That has been effective. We have now been able to get some staff members, and we have become a multilingual program, and that has really helped our participants and many of our landlords. But the biggest issue I'm having is recruiting staff in that are qualified for these programs, that have any experience in housing. And my biggest issue is I go through interview after interview. I get to the process where it's time to hire and make offer. Things are coming back in background checks. We're finding people aren't qualified. And just the other day, I had somebody with a Utica address, has housing experience, comes from another housing authority, And because she's not in the actual municipality and paying taxes to the city of Utica, I can't offer higher. And that's somebody that's coming with experience. If you see in the charts, I've added a whole new training line of about $25,000. It cost myself to go through, and I have been trained in every single position in the department I'm running, because I don't want to run a department and not know what my staff should be doing. I have been certified through HUD, and I have been in through those trainings. But any new staff coming in are going to need those trainings. The resources and savings I would have to be able to hire somebody experienced, whether or not they have the residency requirement or not, get somebody in, get somebody going, would be very cost effective for the program. It's also a year in. I have had an average of 2 to 3 vacancies in my department since I've started a year ago. My staff is working very hard. I'm working very hard, and we really need to fill these positions. So that has been my biggest obstacle.
You're familiar that you can apply for a waiver?
The residency waivers I am
Sure.
familiar with. I want that to be a last resort. I do think it's important that we get City of Utica residents in these positions here at City Hall. I think that's very important to me and all of us here. I've given it, a lot of thought. I've given myself a year to really see what we could recruit out there. And now I'm at this point where I feel like in the near future, we might have to go for the residency waivers. There's really no other option I feel we have, and that's where I'm at with that. So,
Can you walk me through recruiting? I hear you say, you and so many others, but what
Can you hear me?
recruiting?
I just wanted
Thank you.
to ask
Delvin, I got the bad.
No, it's on me. I need to be using the mics.
Can I just ask a quick question? We don't have any say over this particular budget. Like, we can't remove line items. You know what I mean? So just so everyone's clarified, like, we can't take like $500,000 of per money and move it to like another part of our budget line. I mean, these are strictly.
What you could do, as it relates to salaries, you can't change the salary per se, but you can change the wage line.
Right.
Now, if it's below, so say you did 100,000, right? Right? E&A could restore up to 15,000 of
Right.
that, but that's it.
But like, we can't take half income and then like we can't change this particular budget. I
No,
mean,
no, you're right. You
Right, so I
cannot.
just want,
Yes,
just for
you're right, yes,
clarification purposes,
yes,
so this is
yep.
just more informational from her
Yes.
standpoint to us.
Because what you're gonna see also is, and we're not really ready, the mayor wants to do a reorg based on what her recommendations are. You don't see that in this budget at this point, so some of the salaries are a little artificially low. But during COVID, what we recognized, her department especially, if you go up there, people are on top of people. And so we're looking to there's some empty space on the 3rd floor farther down, but we have a leaky roof. As soon as the roof is fixed, we will be opening that space up for them, which also helps us on indirect costs because there's more space that we're renting to them.
And do you pay for that space to rent?
To us, yes, yeah. And so, that's something that Crystal has recognized. And I also want to say, she's done a great job of also recognizing that everything up there's paper. If you go up there, there's just turnstiles of paper. Because every time someone comes in, they have to keep recertifying them for their income. So every time an income changes, someone takes a part-time job, gets another part-time job, there's a new recertification going on. There's also the annual inspections. So she has to be in charge of 1,300 inspections. So she's also looking at trying to get more high-tech, which just use the computers. The staff they have up there right now really enjoys paper. And so that's part of the problem too that she's dealing with. So it's really just a whole big evolution going on.
And I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
I just wanted that explanation.
But I
to
want
kind of-
to. So your point is not that we can't change budgets; is the fact that it's Section 8. Because-
Section 8, yes. So
okay,
we've
I
really
get
never
that.
had Section 8 come down, other
'Cause
than
it's federal
basically an
funding.
introductory, like to just
Right.
kind of explain what they've done. We never really had them involved in the actual budget process because we've never had any say in their actual budget. So
Right.
I was just looking at like, just so that, even if
Okay.
you wanted to like add money and stuff like that, I mean, it's really strictly guided towards her specific guidelines that she has to follow through HUD.
Sure, federal and stuff.
So-
I get that.
Sorry.
yeah.
Delvin?
It was just about the hiring, because I'm hearing this narrative about we can't find people, and it's a horrible precedent and statement essentially that Uticans don't want to work for the city of Utica, right? And that's what I'm hearing.
Well, part of
Or
it's,
that they're not
part of it's
qualified.
salary, part of it is education, part of it is the background check.
Sure.
I will tell you, we had several people over the past month that we wanted to hire, and when we did the background check, we felt
Yeah.
they weren't the right mix for us.
Right.
And that's a difficulty that we have. We don't know that until I mean, when she goes through and she spends a month, we do a first interview and a second interview and a third interview, and we've got the right person, okay, the education, and then we find out, okay, they say they live in Utica, oh, they don't live in Utica, or then we go
What
through
if
the
you
background check.
switch it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What if do the background check in the residency first, instead of wasting your time, because you wouldn't even bother interviewing them?
I agree.
Would that be
But they have
something?
to-
Well, they sign a statement that they live there. I mean, you have to put some trust in
No,
that.
I get
And then
that.
when
I'm
the
just saying,
police
though.
officer goes there to check, they don't live there. I mean,
But part of that background check, they have to, I think it's $85 for the fingerprint, and, you know, they just don't want,
Yeah.
and I don't blame them. Why
you know,
would they want
another
to
thing we
put their
can
own-
consider is maybe outsourcing a temporary agency,
For fingerprinting?
you know, where
You pay for the fingerprints.
I understand, they'll handle everything. Now we can bring them from outside, they want to come in, and
We
they can work through a
actually-
temp agency.
We actually, the mayor decided.
And maybe
about
they'll like it
four-
here and
4
they'll
months ago to
wanna live
utilize
here.
an outside service for trying to find employees.
No, UPD used to handle the actual fingerprinting.
They still do, but they still.
Not specifically towards background checks, because I know that got switched towards the county. The UPD couldn't do
is still doing
something.
them.
Are they?
They're doing
Because
that.
I know for
Do
us.
they do
So
it
we can waive the
electronic?
fee then, right? I mean,
Probably
Not for
electronic.
the fingerprinting, that's outsourced.
So that's what I'm saying, like, when
Where's fingerprinting?
we had to go
BOCES?
get, no.
Masonic.
Masonic,
It's,
it's
um,
electronic.
it's the- Yeah.
it's like
Direct. Right to Albany.
It's about 85.
We actually have someone right now, her fingerprints won't come up, any of them. I mean, they won't, I mean, and so those are some of the difficult, we're dealing with it, filed it, I don't know, but.
Hard-working hands.
Those are my fingerprints.
What is, what is the cutoff for, on the background checks? What triggers you a no-show on a background check?
You know, that's really, that's a better question for the mayor, but I mean, we look at, he does, we look for felonies, you know, every department's different, right? This department is dealing with very sensitive information, they're dealing with HIPAA-related information, they're dealing with W-2s, they're dealing with
Sales tax information.
very, you wouldn't, you know, you think it's just papers, just Section 8, but it's people's personal, private information. If that information were to get out, we as a city could be sued, and we would lose, because that's our employees. So every department is sort of a little bit different as to what's acceptable and what's not. And the mayor works with the department head and actually works with the police department to kind of try to assess that. So I don't really get involved with that.
Can I ask I'd like to ask a question. It's not directly related to your budget, but as long as I've got you here. So what determines how much of that half income, that $6.5 million, what determines how much money we get? Because, I mean, I've always really believed in Section 8 and heard good things about, you know, Section 8 is nice because people get integrated into neighborhoods rather than being siloed into low-income housing developments, et cetera. Section 8, as you yourself said, is good for landlords, right? So do we have a waiting list for Section 8 here in the city?
So it used to be about 5 years.
Okay.
This past year, we've got it down to about 3 years. We've done a tremendous amount of pulls from the wait list over the time of the pandemic. We had an 88% success rate with the pulls from the wait list, meaning 88 of our participants were actually leased up in sustainable housing, affordable housing, safe housing, and that's what we like to see. So we're at about a 3-year wait list. We're still getting applicants every day.
Okay.
So that wait list just will continue to grow.
Right.
And how HUD figures out our disbursement schedule for the HAP, it
Yeah.
actually looks at previous month's HAP and what we put out there, and it will adjust to see what we're putting out there. We have a certain amount of vouchers allocated to us. HUD gives us that amount of vouchers. As they see us do well, we are a high-performing housing authority here. We are one of the most high-performing housing authorities in our area, which is amazing. They continue to give us more vouchers, more programs, and more funding. So the successful, history we have, thanks to my predecessor, and the continuance of that success will get us more funding allocated in the future. They're going to take the past 6 months of what they've seen dispersed. If we're going over that amount, and they're seeing we're consistently over that amount, and it does happen, our average, I said, is about $550,000 per month right now. And last month, I just did the rental payments. It was $575. HAP will see that went over, and in the next few months, they're going to adjust what they disperse to us in that HAP is housing assistance payment. line, and they will disperse more. That being said, until we get the congressional appropriation of what HUD is going to give us, we don't actually know. This is our estimate, but I can see this number being raised a little higher. I'm anticipating a number closer to 8 million, because
That's a lot higher.
yeah, well, our budget right now says about 7,600,000 or around that.
6.5 million.
Yeah, that's in half, but overall with the administrative fees and the half combined, I'm seeing it probably be a little bit more closer to half. And it's good to have that reserve money, because when we start going over in those rental subsidy payments, we have a little bit of a buffer in reserve there. That being said, I cannot just give out more vouchers. I cannot give out something that's not allocated to me. I'm under those federal regulations. When HUD sees we're performing well, they usually give us more. So that's how it works.
Thank you, that's very helpful. So the better we do, the more vouchers we'll have to give out to people.
The more services, the more
Right.
programs they'll offer
The more
us.
good, safe housing we'll be able to offer
That's
to our
what's
people.
happening.
That's great.
Is there any more questions for?
Delvin, I think
Yeah,
you had one, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Sure.
Delvin.
Thank you, Crystal.
So the 3 years is based upon a need for housing or just a process with regard to being qualified for Section 8? So if we had more housing options, you'd be able to pump out more finances through Section 8?
That's not necessarily true. It's not really based on affordable housing stock or housing stock out there currently. It's actually based on the successful lease up that we have in our program. So yes, it all plays in. I guess it's
So
all
more-
part of
Yeah.
it, but HUD's not actually looking at our affordable housing stock. They're looking at how we're implementing the program successfully. So in order for us to get more vouchers and get more vouchers in, they have to see that we have that need, we have the waiting list. Our participants out there in the city of Utica are leasing up. They're leasing up into a certain amount of time. You know, vouchers expire. I've had people out there with 180 days of vouchers needing to lease up. And most of our participants, though, have been very successful leasing up within 30 to 60 days. That's really great, considering the concerns over the housing stock up there. I also work regularly to increase the payment standards in the program. So that means with each voucher bedroom size, there's a certain payment standard that we'll pay up to. And that really has helped us with the rental increases in the city. That if, you know, the rents are going up in the city, I've increased twice since I've come into the position, because we need to increase that payment standard so that people can lease up effectively. However, that hurts us because we can't lease up our full vouchers with increasing the payment standards. But when HUD sees this and they see the back projection of this, they usually adjust.
What's the limit for Section 8? What's the income limit?
Family size, what is family size you're looking at? Family size
Single
of
and then 4. Single and then family of 4.
family of 4, extremely low income, you know, you're looking at anywhere from 26,000 is extremely low, 36 very low, and the low is 57. And, you know, for a 4-bedroom, our payment standards are up to over
What's the
13.
57?
Not a single one.
I'm sorry, 57,000
For a family of,
is the low income standard.
Or a family of 4.
Family of 4.
Anything else?
I think Christine passed around
Nice
very
job.
well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very informative.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure if we
Yes,
have
Christine
questions,
has
we'll
been
come
a
up and
pillar
see
of
you.
knowledge for me. Thank you.
Head up to the 3rd floor if you have any more questions.
If you need an appointment, thank you for exhausting those avenues. If you need an appointment, don't hesitate.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Next up, fire, page 36.
Where's your salaries?
Starts on page
Oh, guys can
36.
wait.
Since they are here tonight too, they're also, if you're okay, Councilman DeBrango, they're also willing to talk a little bit about their capital requests. I don't know if they're gonna wait, but they're willing, since they're here, to talk about that too.
36?
Page 36.
What pages are the salaries on?
Page, starts on page 64. So I don't know where you'd like to begin.
We can hold the capital claim, you guys, why don't we leave the capital claim in front of us and you guys can spiel with that? When you wanna
can, but I think maybe some of this will come up, so.
During the capital, during this? Okay.
Yes. So not a lot has changed under fire this year. You know, the same mission is there, the same basic initiatives are there. There are some slight increases and decreases, especially as it comes to fuel, and some repairs that are necessary. As you know, we began a $2 million, because you gave permission to borrow money, a $2 million campaign this past year for renovations at Central, and I believe.
Yeah, so that part of the capital included Station 2 on Bleecker Street and the roof and parapet repair at Station 1 on Woodsboro Street.
Have we started doing that, Liz?
So we should be going to RFP, we're going out to bid shortly. Just talked to lead architect again. He was just waiting for something back from the HVAC mechanical. And as soon as we get that back, the front end's being handled by city engineering. We have the meeting, and then they should go out.
So we approved this money last year. Why is it so, just because of COVID and because of all that? What is the?
The materials delays alone, we started having meetings last summer. We've been working with Bonacci Architects, they've been the lead architect firm. At the time, roofing delays was about 26 weeks. There was just no way that we could get that out to bid and start that project. So the goal was to get bids out by the middle of March so we could get these bids awarded by the middle of April and get the project started.
All right, so I'm a little confused because you said it's going to go out to RFP, but now you're saying you're working with Bonacci.
It's going to bid, so we put out the RFP for an architect and engineering firm. And it's very, because I've learned more than I knew before. These buildings have been retrofitted numerous times. In doing so, certain things, whether it relates to the HVAC or windows, water, all these things are kind of tied in together. So the architect really had to spend a lot of time, because you're not just putting in a unit for HVAC. You're putting things in the walls.
So what you're saying is you have your architect, he told you the plan, now you're gonna bid.
Yeah, so the specs are just about complete. And then it will go to Board of Contract and Supply, and it's anticipated, I think, in the next 2 weeks that it will hit Board of Contract and Supply, the specs itself, and then the bids are going to be due back in the middle of April so that it can be awarded.
What was the Whitesville Street house? The Whitesville Street house, you can still fit rigs in it? It's gonna be really tight with that.
It's a tight fit. You know, the station was opened in 1903. It was built for horses.
I mean, they're talking inches to back those mirrors.
Yeah, we've already expanded the doors as much as that they'll go.
Okay.
That station, Shepherd Place, and the fire academy on Bleecker Street are in need of substantial.
So you believe that the investment in Whitesboro is needed at this time?
Yeah, at this time, yeah, they get the water leak has just gotten too bad. You know, part of the reason for the water leak is that there's a big issue with the parapet as well. So it's not only the roof that we're doing, but we're repairing the parapet with our brickwork.
Any skylights for you guys?
No skylights, we're eliminating all skylights on the fire department.
I have a question.
Fire away.
I have a couple questions. So, first of all, just very general question, so not about this capital plan or about the budget. But I remember several years ago being given a tour of the Shepherd Place station. If you were given money to repair the Shepherd, to make repairs at Shepherd Place, you would have repairs that you would want to make, right? Or upgrades or improve the facility?
Absolutely.
That's not something, you wouldn't be like, oh, I don't know what to do with that money. Okay, thanks.
They actually have a whole entire plan that they put together. I think it was Chief Clark. I mean, they spent probably hundreds and thousands of dollars on plans that they need to upgrade. That's why I don't even know why you needed Bonacci Architect to go in, because part of that should have been
It's a
in all the
plan, it's
design.
not specs. It's spec, just that.
No, I know, but I thought that's what they did.
Yeah, that wasn't part of that.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Frank. I'm just saying. 'Cause it was just.
Celeste, you have the
Sorry.
floor.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Thanks, Frank. Okay, so thank you. That's just good to know. I mean, I sort of figured that would be the case, but that there would always be some things that building would need. It's a beautiful old building. Okay, two other questions. Again, they're not directly related to this budget, but do you track, I'm assuming you track, like on a 24-hour basis, when you're getting a lot of service calls coming in and when you're not getting a lot of service calls coming in. So I assume you know what times a day you're busy and what times a day you're not busy.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, just off the top of your head?
Our busiest times are Monday through Friday between 8 o'clock in the morning and midnight.
8 and midnight.
Our busiest days are usually Mondays and Fridays. Those 2 days tend to be the heaviest days with the ambulance transportation.
Okay. And then, so my question is, when we have shifts on 24 hours, doesn't that mean that we're staffing in a way which isn't mapping on to when we're really busy and when we're not really busy? Because in most other operations, you would staff less when you're less busy and staff more when you're more busy, but we're staffing continuously. We have the same amount of staff on at any day of the week, any time of the day, correct?
Yeah, so we staff according to potential, not according to when our business call days are. So everything's based on potential when it comes to fire service. So we don't schedule fires, so like 3 o'clock in the morning, we may not have a lot of fires throughout the year, but we know that when we do have reports of fires, that they are serious. They sometimes result in fatalities, throughout the years, and serious civilian injuries. So we always we staff according to potential.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the city.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
if you have a major fire, what happens is you don't do the transports, right?
Well, when we do have a major fire, actually, for us right now, any fire that we have is utilizes all the staff that we have available. So we go out to one ambulance during that fire. That ambulance, if they're available, they report to the fire scene because we got to have an ambulance for firefighters. It's one of the standards that we have to follow. And then we call back additional resources as well.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then I just have one other question, which really isn't relevant to budget, but we got you here. So do you do an annual sexual harassment training in the department?
Yes, we are required by New York State.
By New York State law?
To conduct sexual harassment training.
Okay.
And workplace violence training.
Right,
on a yearly basis.
And do you do that on your own, or do you do that through Lori
Sexual
Rebel
harassment-
upstairs?
Okay, so the sexual harassment training was mandated by the Office of Fire Prevention and Control. It's included in our yearly training
Oh, okay.
every year.
Okay. Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Can I ask a question about the, like the major fires? How does that work? I mean, you said you use every available personnel. How does that go into overtime? Can you talk a little bit about that? Does that affect overtime? Does it affect how you then operate as a department? I just want to kind of, if it's staffing based upon potential, and that can be any time, how does that work with regard to staff issues or personnel during the department?
Okay, so you want to just talk about when we have a fire?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we have a fire, we send first 15 guys or 16 guys assigned respond to that fire. Almost immediately, we're starting activities, we're starting behind the eight ball.
And those 15 guys are there for the duration of the fire?
Yes. I mean, at 4 hours, we try to rotate personnel out. We try to do that on a pretty regular basis, so when they're soaked at, after a couple hours, take for instance, 505 Wetmore Street, close to zero. These guys have been operating for 3 hours plus. We try to rotate crews in and out so we don't freeze them and they're soaked. But yeah, so whenever we have a fire, anything over a smaller room of contents fire, it really requires all the personnel that we have within the city to respond to that fire. My thing especially, it's just put the fire out.
Yeah.
So people equals efficiency, and more people we have on the fire ground at that time, we can affect more operations. We can get something done a lot faster.
So you're aware, everybody here is where we staff a minimum 23 a day, right? Is that right? Okay, so
Yeah,
that's where the numbers start.
So I'm asking because, I hear a lot about burnout and talking, and living on Park. I mean, that fire station is one of the most active in the area.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if there's a fire, people from Park respond, right?
Yep.
They've been responding to stuff all day, all their
Yep.
shift,
They have.
as opposed to maybe other fire department, other stations have not, right? Potentially, right?
Other stations may not have the same call volume, but other stations are absolutely on the calls for it.
Sure, yeah, correct. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, with going back to what Councilperson Friend was saying about the efficacy of the staffing and all of that stuff, burnout. I'm just trying to get a bigger picture of like firefighting. I've not, had that extensive aspect of firefighting like I've had it with, like the police and other aspects. I'm just trying to understand and learn all of that.
Can I piggyback on that question?
Sure, as long as Delvin's done.
Yeah, I'm good.
Delvin?
Yeah.
So why not, because I've heard this too, that, Station 7, hard station, people work hard, burn out, it's go, go, go out of that station. So why aren't we,
It's on.
certainly is.
This is broke.
So why aren't, can you explain to us why you don't rotate people out of that station and into another one in order to kind of give people a break? So that there's like, so that,
It's a great question. We are a strictly seniority-based system, so, when our younger guys get promoted to their job, it means that person that's been on 3 or 4 years, 5 years, is gonna rotate out of that station, and then, the newer personnel are gonna take that spot. It's just the way the rotation works. Senior guys bid outside, they're gonna bid out of that house when they get the chance, and they go to the outer houses.
and they're not interested in going back in order to give their younger colleagues, keep their younger colleagues from burning out.
Everyone gets the opportunity to work at that station. They're gonna be traveling over there, and again, that's a seniority-based travel, so we can send a junior guy and a junior guy and a
Thank you.
I think.
Some guys probably, I'm sorry. Some guys probably like that house, like the action too, though, right?
Yeah,
Probably got-
there's definitely a category of guys that have been there for a while. We're looking at some of the most dedicated civil servants that I know.
But they all start at that firehouse, so it's not like you just randomly get put to like Whitesboro Street Firehouse. You all start at you all started on Ida Street.
Right.
Yeah,
And then get
so
transferred out once you get that experience. So I mean,
Yeah.
you can't
Right.
ask for better experience from
Yeah,
that
right.
place.
Right, but all I'm saying is some guys might not wanna leave there.
Right,
Yes.
you have a lot of people.
Well, you have a chance to bid out. If you don't want to bid out to
Yeah, you
another
stay.
house, then you
Right.
can stay there.
Yeah, we've had guys that have left there, they've been back. Our officers, all the officers that are there right now, they've all been there, because they want to be there, and, which is great.
Am I right in saying some of the guys will rotate from ambulance 1 to ambulance 2 to ambulance 3? Ambulance 1 obviously is the busiest.
Ambulance 1 is the primary, medical transport for the city, so if you're on ambulance 1 for the 10-hour shift, your primary responsibility is ambulance 3 only, and when you're on ambulance 2 and 3, your responsibility is split between the engine that's there, staffing the engine, and staffing the 2 ambulances and transport.
Just something quick, you guys remember the king of kings for fire, Chief Brooks. His brainstorm is still sticking in my head, the consolidation of all the departments and leaving North Utica in there. Maybe in the future you can start, contemplating that, and we can make one mega facility in the center of the city, and, you know what I mean, have the state-of-the-art equipment for the guys, and, all the apparatuses, and, I know, we gotta think about chasing money with these old firehouses. We gotta think about it.
Yeah.
So when you guys start, especially you, I know you're a numbers guy, top to bottom, when you see yourself chasing numbers after these buildings and saying, hey, listen, we're putting in all this money into these buildings every year, this payment can go for building a new one. You know what I mean, guys? Because that day's gonna come. You know that, and I know that. That brick and mortar is not gonna last forever.
Absolutely.
So,
But have that ship sailed with ARPA? Capital projects are pricey. Could we not have used the money for that, project?
Of course you can.
of course you can.
But you're really getting into consolidating firehouses to one central location. I mean, for a perfect example, look at the fire academy, okay? The fire academy trains people from all across the state. They get funding from, other municipalities to train their firefighters. If you look at that surrounding neighborhood, that fire academy has kept that neighborhood, pretty safe considering. So I think when you get away from the actual neighborhood firehouses, people lose that sense of security of having that firehouse in their district.
Especially to have them in each part of the city as well. You're right, the sense of security is
The firehouses are truly the key to
matter
response time.
of minutes before you get to a house.
At the end of the day, fire protection is all about response time.
you're
but we're
looking at,
such a
like, even
small
for-
city geographically, so there, I mean,
We're really
one of the
not.
things that I love about Utica is that you can get from one end of town to the other, and without a siren, pretty
minutes.
quickly,
Without a flood in North Utica.
without a
Right.
siren, you know.
It's something to
Um,
contemplate in the future, guys, because it's gonna come to the time where half these firehouses is not gonna be sufficient enough, so, please, when you see it, don't
Well,
hesitate.
you say that, and I agree with you at a certain point, but on that level, they haven't put no money into those houses for in a long time either. For years, we didn't have money because we were worried about raising taxes. So now, once we do that, I don't believe, I mean, we're fixing a roof. I don't believe you're gonna have to fix a roof for 15 or 20 years
But
either,
some of
right?
these buildings were never built to hold big, heavy trucks to begin with.
It's-
They have
Well, we say
basements.
some of these buildings, what is there, 5 firehouses? It's not like we got 100 of them.
There's 6 firehouses plus the fire.
Right, the one in North Utica is new, not new, but is a newer building, they built that when I was a
1962.
kid, Genesee. Bleecker Street is not a fossil.
1974.
Right.
We just took eminent domain for that property. It's not like you
Right.
couldn't expand the firehouses in the neighborhoods if you needed to. So, I mean.
All right, let's get back to the budget.
I'm good, I'm good.
Now, in this budget, we don't have accountability. I know they're 2 years behind, like firefighters. They didn't get a raise yet. Hopefully they will. There's nothing in here that's gonna help us with this budget financially. Whatever the number, bottom line is for the fire department, that doesn't include
That's correct.
possible increases of 2, 3, 4%, whatever it may be.
4%?
Why not?
Come on, only the fire chiefs get 4%. Come on.
No, I'm just asking. Does it include anything? Is there anything in there that we have to worry about? I mean,
It's not.
they're
built
gonna
into
be
this budget.
settling a contract hopefully soon.
Yeah.
So what do you anticipate? Let's just base it on 3%. What do you anticipate the increase would be for 2 years?
3% per year.
8,000?
Let me
9,000,
give you an
10,000?
answer a different way.
I mean,
If we had to give both police and fire, police is 2 years behind, fire will be 3. Yeah. Yeah, depending on what percentage, this budget would go up $1.5 million to $2 million.
$1.5 million to $2 million?
Depending on, is it 2%, is it
So-
3%, is it 1%, whatever. I mean, nothing is built in here. Now, you could ask the question, what did we do last year? Last year, we did a 2-year retro for the fire department. You may recall, I think it was 2.75, 2 years.
2.25, so 4.5%.
Oh, 2.2, yeah, that rolled over. How could we do that? And that wasn't built into the budget.
We
That-
also have a $3 million
Right.
surplus from this year's budget going into next.
That was basically paid for through the growth of sales tax. If you take a look, and we'll be talking about that next week under revenues, what I'm anticipating for this year and why, and we take a kind of a retrospective, and where we could be or could not be this time next year, there might be some opportunities there. So I'm looking and trying to plan for some type of an increase for both fire and police. Trying.
Okay.
You mind if Joe, you're in line. Can I go?
Joe,
No,
Joe?
go on.
Thank you. All right, couple questions. So for repairs, we're on page 37. We talked about, that was actually for the firehouse. And the budget line from, the actual year-to-date and what we used. I see that the mayor was gonna increase it, what he requested, the 120,000. Do you transfer ARPA funding through that, or does that strictly stay under the?
That's why I had mentioned, I know I sent this out, I don't know if you guys have it, but part of that is actually built into the capital budget. There was some necessary improvements that have to happen over on Park Ave.
So for example, on page 37, you've got the 461 line under repairs, right?
Mhm.
So you're still at 90,000. So are those those are repairs that we've budgeted for? So what's the difference between that repair and the actual capital plan
So I'll give
repair
you an
that we've
example,
done?
right now, for the majority of our firehouses, we've been patching roofs. I mean, what we did over at the fire academy Deputy Chief, Assistant Chief Noon can, talk about the pigeons, the mice,
Bats.
the bats.
And bees.
Yeah, and wasn't there a tree in there too?
I think the question is the same.
So, but we would go
It's
back, but
twice.
we go and repair that, right? So
Right.
now if we're not repairing it and we're actually doing a complete reconstruction of the roof, you're taking out some of those repair costs. So by putting in a roof for Park Ave, right, and some of the HVAC we repair every year. I mean, we just did probably $60,000 in HVAC
No,
repairs.
I totally
Okay.
understand that, so I'm
Okay.
specifically talking about line 461 under
Yes.
repairs, okay? So $90,000, what would you budgeted that repair for, because we got the capital plan after we got the budget
Probably 120.
presented to us. So what is that repair actually for, so to speak? Like if you're repairing
HVAC and roofs are.
All right, let's take two separate things, like, okay, so say we have the capital plan under the ARPA funding, and then
Yep.
we have this repair plan, okay? Are you utilizing the ARPA funding to repair what was necessary in
No,
this budget line?
no.
So what is the repair for this budget line, under that 461 line? I guess, so to speak, because like I said, the budget was
It
already
would just
passed.
be- it
But
could
listen,
be-
the budget was passed
We-
prior to that,
we're
so what I'm saying.
anticipating issues.
Well, it could be anything.
Right, but what I'm saying is that if they're going to repair it, why not utilize that funding towards another firehouse, maybe say $30-something thousand? Because like I said, this budget was actually passed prior to that actually coming out. So did you budget for those repairs in this actual line? Or could you utilize those fundings for the repairs under the fire admin for another firehouse?
So at the end of the day, we know in turn, I'm trying to share this information, we know that because not all our firehouses have good roofs on them, we're going to be doing repairs. If we take one of those firehouses and we fix it, we put a new roof on it, we know that we're not gonna be doing repairs at that. Same with HVAC.
Right, so I guess my question is, so if you needed those repairs, not just because it's under fire administration, they could go towards another firehouse, not necessarily towards the central
Yeah,
Bleecker
they
Street
could.
fire?
They
Okay, so
could.
I just wanted to just double check.
And I will, and one thing, you know, we don't really talk about it much here, just because of the way our engineering department is, often we can't even get the repairs done because we just don't have the physical time to get things bid out, and so we're constantly behind the 8 ball on that, right? Constantly.
Well, that's what I said, even year to date. I mean, well, not for nothing, he kind of makes sense. I mean, but we used to use Bobby D's stuff, and he used to do all the stuff to help us with flooding. I mean, if somebody was willing to do it, I mean, but I guess that's here nor there. So a couple other questions if we go down the line. A replacement overtime, under 106,
Yep.
under the fire line. What do you anticipate for the actual increase? Is that, I mean, because we've been pretty steady between, you know, the actual year-to-date 335. Like, what would you expect at $150,000?
So I'm gonna let
$120,000
Assistant Chief
increase for?
Noon to speak to this, but I do wanna tell you, you know, this past year, we've seen a few more injuries than we've had in the past. And that's part of
But I
what's.
think this goes back to the question of why you staff and why it's important to have
Yeah.
those people respond. So I just want to touch base on why that line was increased.
Well, it had remained steady for years, and obviously we just passed a 4.5%, so just taking the 350,000 and 4.5%, that it went up. Plus, we did take a look at our long-term 207, which we have at least 5, maybe a 6, gonna be on there soon. Full-time positions that won't be coming to work at all. Another, what was it? 3 that missed half a year each, and then regular sick leave. I'm talking not just calling them with a cold or something, had serious either operations or other things where they missed, 4 months or more. It's just caused that, in order to be safe, we've got to budget a decent amount for it.
If they do get raises, that, since you went a little bit higher, that may offset
It may,
some of the costs as well, right? I mean,
it may.
so.
So, okay, let's keep going down the line. I know I have a few more going from here. Policeman overtime, no, actually, it's okay, we can skip that. Fire training, fire communication, fire mechanic. Oh, no, it's not gonna be the equipment. Heather, after this year, can you get rid of that auto equipment line on page 40? Seeing how, or are you planning on keeping stuff in there? On page 40?
Oh, the 203 lane?
Yeah, the 203.
Yeah.
I mean, since you're moving it to a capital plan, I mean, to me, there seems no.
Yeah, I know, there's some lines here, I keep
I
trying to
know
put
it's
lines
after
every
3
year.
years, that's why I was curious to know if you
Painful,
were
I know.
actually
I try to
planning on putting
reduce
that
it.
in. Okay, so fire EMT, we got that, replacement overtime. So now, can we talk about the replacement overtime for EMT as well? Is this for anticipation for raises, so on and so forth?
There's no anticipation for raises.
Okay, but I was just saying, like, obviously it's increased by $50,000 compared
kinda
to
goes
the
back to
actual
the same
year to
thing.
date.
Yeah, that's the same thing. We try to, when the ambulances were first started, we tried to justify well, if you remember, when the ambulance first started, Rescue One which was ambulance one, now it's straight callback. Now it's staffed. We still try to attribute some of that overtime to the ambulances. So that's why the separation of two lines, for what's really, you know, it's kind of a generic number now. We just take the first callback a day, I think we charge that to the ambulance, and then the rest of the calls will come out of the other. So it's even though it's in two lines, it's really one.
Okay, and
complete sum.
actually, this is a question for you guys. Do you guys still do ROP inspections?
We do.
You do, okay. So I just,
We
because
do.
I saw the
There was a long
ROP,
hiatus.
I saw the
with COVID.
ROP stipend, that's why I was just curious. I didn't know if that was actually based in your actual
Oh, yeah.
pay increase or if that was actually separate from the ROP stipend line.
I mean,
Because under
second-
your call, well, the call center under Munis, those stipends are included in the actual salary, not separate from the actual
They
stipend.
are, we separate them in the budget. The controller's office, I don't know why, do not separate them. Often, we actually had a problem with the police department a couple months ago where all their unused sick time got put to their salaries. So when I do the budget, I go through and I try to ask that the controller's office reallocate so that we can have a proper budget. So I'll take a look at that.
Okay.
Just a question on the ROP. We're still, I think we started in 2006, and it was $20 a flat, right, two-family? Has it changed? Is it still,
Yeah.
are we
No,
still?
it's more.
Is it more? Huh?
$80
80? Okay.
Only
I know, it was a long time ago.
It's based on units too, so it goes up from there.
Okay.
That's the minimum.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll keep going. So let's go down to page 53 under fire employee benefits.
Yes.
So we talked about the actual year to date, and you sent me that information under that. So let's talk about the medical. So the 3503006,
Mm-hmm.
and then if we go to page 99, where you have the 3060328.
Yep.
What is why is there a
There is no
discrepan-
relation to those two things, so let me explain to you. I wasn't prepared to talk about that tonight, but next week, but I'll be happy to
Okay,
just
sure.
these. I have several long spreadsheets. Medical isn't just for Excelis. It includes everything from EAP, we pay out in lieu ofs, we have dental, we have every cost center, and I can bring it with me next time. I go through, it probably takes me a week to put the medical together. So what you're seeing on the self-insurance is Excelis only. So it's a subset of that medical line.
So-
And I have it all broken out to the dollar, so.
Okay, so let me ask a couple other questions. So
Okay.
then if you're talking about the actual cost center, this is just obviously for the self-insurance fund revenues, okay? Which that's totally understandable. So show me where in the budget where you see the revenues for the fire employee benefits inside this actual budget. Like, where do I coincide with page 53? Like, see how you have like.
It's all part of it, and the only place you're gonna see that the contribution, is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah,
By
because I mean,
firemen?
we separated the contribution, which I'm gonna get
Yeah.
into that in a little bit too, because to me, it's kind of confusing, because I guess if you look at it, I mean, even for police, fire, and so on and so forth, I mean, there's definitely a different, there's strictly medical, right? And then there's different things that factor into the actual medical, whether we're talking about member contribution or, what the actual cost is. So I guess, and obviously through the spreadsheet, I'll see that, but how does that self-insurance separate from the actual medical? Like, so dental has to be included, all those
Okay,
things
so
have to be
every
included.
one of, okay, and that's the tough part, because they're all different. So fire and police are very different because the dental and the optical is different for police. That's paid through Teamsters.
Right.
Okay? So every one of these is different, and that's why I wasn't prepared tonight, or I'd bring all my spreadsheets. You'll see that I break it down by every category and every cost center, and you'll see that member contribution, which will match that number.
So, and here's the thing that I guess the question that I have with the member contribution, and this is obviously something that we're gonna have to get into that's a little more in depth once those spreadsheets come. So for example, you have member contribution of $391,000, right? And I understand that the police department has one insurance fund under the HRA, so on and so forth, okay? So let me ask a question. In the 4 separate healthcare plans that the fire department has, I do know that under an HSA, the city does contribute 80% towards their HSA account,
Yes.
okay? That could be, well, it's $4,000 out of the
Yeah,
hundred,
yeah,
okay,
yes,
that could
yeah.
be reimbursed towards the city.
Yeah.
So if we were to look at this, and this is I guess what's confusing to me, as far as member contribution for police and fire. If you look at the contribution, why isn't the $5,000 under the HRA contribution that the city gives, you know, included into that? Because, I mean, technically.
Well, it's two different types of contributions. So the contribution that's listed there is directly what the employee is paying towards their health care.
Right, okay, so two questions I'm gonna
Okay.
bounce off you from
Yep.
that, okay? Are the retirees included into both of these?
If they are paying towards it, they are included.
Okay, so here's another thing too, which, if you look at the retirees' police contribution and fire contribution, it's definitely a little different, because the
Different
pay a little higher
contracts,
for
different
police and
contracts,
so, and
yeah.
so on and so
Yeah.
forth. So I guess my question goes back to the fact is, two things. One, the police department definitely has a higher turnover of those, half the department contributing 20% towards their healthcare insurance
Well,
because of the younger.
All of the fire actives contribute 20%, all of them.
Fire or
Police.
police?
Excuse me, police, all of them.
Correct. So-
A very small portion of retirees contribute, very
Okay,
small portion.
So let's go back to that. So when did UPD start contributing every single member? Was that when their
About
class
2 years
contract?
ago,
Okay, so
yeah.
that was when their contract was settled.
Yep.
So let's look at that. So if the city were to offer the fire department, those that could retire, retirement incentive, that would bring on board more of those new hirees that would automatically be contributing to that 20%.
Yes, but we also get the luxury of paying for 2 healthcares. Okay?
Well, you could.
So from a budgetary perspective, I don't want people to retire because we're paying for their health care. You forget the contribution, right? Once they retire, I'm paying for their health care, right?
But that's still for fire too, or for police too.
That's
So
true.
either or,
Yeah,
either
but-
or.
But they're contributing. But either or, and it doesn't matter who, what department.
Right.
From a budgetary perspective, I don't want public safety to retire, because when they retire, we're paying for the new guy and we're paying for the retiree. That's part of their contract, and so of course we're gonna honor it.
Right.
But when you look at it from a budgetary perspective, what's gonna startle you, and I wish I brought it with, I just didn't. It's gonna startle you to see how much we're paying towards, and I don't remember, I wanna say it's police, I can't remember if it's police or fire. We're actually paying more in retiree healthcare than we're paying for actives.
Well, I know that's police, because I mean, I can tell you
Yeah,
that's
okay,
discussions
so
that we've
recall.
had, those are just discussions that we had in prior budgets.
Yeah.
So let's get back to this and why I think, as far
Well,
as
you
settling,
got
no, I'm
the
just
floor.
saying, because you brought it up, as far as settling contracts. So let's look, for example, back in 2000, say somebody was hired for police in 2006, and fired in 2006, okay? Hired in police in 2006, they're probably at about a $65,000 pay rate. Police, $78,000, okay? Fire for a 2 year, police for a 3-year contract was settled at 3.5%, okay? Or, 3.75, 3.75%, which took out to be 11.25% in pay increase, okay? If you look at the fire, you had a 4.5% pay increase, okay? Which, when you settled that contract, technically, it would equal out to be about almost 8 or 9 on average. I'm not saying this is in general, about an $8,000 pay increase towards towards police for that contract settlement. Whereas fire, you had about a $2,000 average pay increase on that it was like 2,700 based on if I divided every member by whatever. So my question is when you talk about that 20% healthcare contribution for police specifically, because, you know, in comparison, you know, and it bothered me a little when I saw the police contribution and the fire contribution, and for a couple of reasons. One is that they did settle a contract, so any increase to that 20% would have been supplemented towards that 11.5% that they would have received from that pay increase, from
Yes.
that contract settlement,
Yes.
right? So it technically wouldn't have hurt them to have that 20% contribution, so to speak, because they had that 11.5%.
Well, it's appearance. I don't necessarily disagree with you, it's appearance. Did I put that much thought into it? I really didn't.
And I understand it, but for me, looking at it, and I kind of was like, oh my God, well, what's the difference? Well, right, so, I mean, it kind of does make sense, and that's why I think it's important that this does get settled, because you would see a difference in that contribution towards that healthcare increase, maybe if they would have got something that could have supplemented that pay increase. So that was all. That was kind of, I guess, confusing towards me, and I know that the fire chiefs are on a different contract, and that's another thing. Did you guys change your increase in healthcare for the contributions, or is that
Their-
separate? So
Their contract states that if we go to self-insurance, that they would contribute.
what was the percentage? Was that 20%, or was there a
Yeah,
different
20% and the high deductible.
Okay, and I think even for you guys, that through your pay raises, could have supplement that 20% pay contribution towards that healthcare. So, I mean, I guess when you're comparing apples and apples, it kind of does make sense to, you know, if you want the healthcare contribution and you're comparing the fire and police towards their healthcare contributions, and obviously you
But I
didn't
wasn't
mean it like
comparing
that,
them.
and I understand that, but like when I'm looking at it, I'm seeing that police member contribution and fire member contribution are a lot different.
Yes.
And like I said, there's a lot of variables that go into that. So I think that that's where, you know, maybe consolidating the healthcare plans through negotiation, maybe going to the HRA for fire with that 20% contribution in comparison towards those pay raises would kind of make sense. So that was all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Fire department? No more discussion? Okay.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have, and lastly, is Brian Thomas. Come on up. And we're gonna start with UED. UED, is on page 82. As you may recall, 82, UED, primarily consists of, federal dollars. Federal dollars. And so what happens is, we put we put a holder in here of what Brian thinks might be coming our way. We don't know yet what's coming our way. More importantly, we do this so that you can always see the table of organization, because that is something that you do have some purview over. So, I don't know, Brian, if there's anything you'd like to really add. We did not add any new employees this year.
Any what?
New employees, we did not add any new employees this year. And I don't believe there was really anything of significance that changed within the department.
No.
I don't have any questions.
Brian, you have like 43 different budgets in this budget. So you have CDBG, you have urban renewal, and you have urban and economic development.
Well, CDBG falls
Under the
Urban
urban,
economic
oh yeah,
development.
that's right, because everything could be factored back into
And
it.
even though he wasn't here for it, Section 8 does fall under.
Oh, under your budget as well. I was thinking about taking out Section 8 and giving you a lot more money. A couple questions that I just have. For, specifically related to zoning, you know, with a number of things, who oversees zoning minus you in your department?
Well, I
Like-
have a principal planner, Chris Lawrence.
Okay.
He staffs the planning board. I also have a senior administrative aide, Patty DeCar. She provides staff support to the Scenic and Historic Preservation Commission as well as the zoning board. And also weighing in on zoning issues is community development specialist Derek Crossman.
Okay, Derek Crossman, I did not know that. I might have known that, I just kind of forgot. As far as, oh God, I just had my train of thought and then you totally lost me on that one. Urban renewal properties, okay? What is your urban renewal? I know we haven't had very many properties to sell recently because we've sold a lot of properties, and I see that possibly a lot of properties through the urban renewal agency could come to foreclosures. Besides Gene Allen, who is helping with urban renewal, like the sale of the actual properties?
Paul Buckley, to some extent, helps with the media
Advertisement.
in terms of
So
advertising.
it's just Gene Allen specifically doing that now?
Correct.
Do you still have a budget line in your budget to help you with those, like, I remember you had two, you had at one
I
point.
previously had two positions,
So
Gene
you-
Allen and Andrew Burdisi.
Did you eliminate the Andy Berdisi's?
I had funded it for a number of years and it stayed unfilled. I believe in this budget I proposed that
Yeah, it's unfunded.
that be taken out.
Okay, now, let me ask a question. So in the meantime, I guess specifically, what is the job responsibility of, say, I don't wanna use names, you know, your urban, or your URA,
Your marketing director.
your marketing director, what is their responsibility when they don't have properties to actually market and sell? do they help with the function of the economic development department? Is there, what is the responsibility?
They work at City Hall like the golf course does when, that's what I was told.
So I'll give you a great example. A couple of years ago, we had a lead problem in one of the firehouses. He is certified lead inspector. So he actually went out and took a look at the firehouse for us and saved us quite a bit of money. That is not normal. He is cleaning buildings out that we get. He's cleaning buildings out. He's helping when we have to mitigate a property, it has to be mowed. He's working with codes to get someone over there from DPW to mow. So there's a lot of actual maintenance that's going on all the time. Where he was today, actually walked in on the board, he was over at Northland. We had a water problem over in Northland, so he's over there checking that every day. Because we had a water, actually I think it was the heating system had a problem.
Did that approval not go through yet for the sale of that?
We haven't closed on it yet.
There's an easement issue that the buyer's looking into, buyer's attorney is looking into.
But
The easement that we granted for $1, is that easement or is that not a separate
No,
one?
it's a historic easement from long ago.
Okay. So what if that doesn't go through, then the sale of that doesn't go through?
I think they thought that was cleared up, or it's
I
being
believe-
cleared up.
yeah,
I mean, I'm just
it's
curious, we went through the
cleared up.
eminent domain process, I was just curious to know, like, should we,
No, I have no doubt that it'll close.
it'll close on that no matter what, okay. And this is kind of going back, is there I remember back that the comptroller provided an account balance for the urban renewal agency's funds.
Yeah,
Is that in here? Is that
No,
under-
because this is the budget, but I can get you that number.
If you
I
could.
want to say it's about 800,000.
I think it's a little under that. It was historically at about $1 million. However, with very little inventory for the last year or so due to COVID, that has dropped. Our last audit, I think, pegged it at right around 750,000, I believe.
So let me ask you a question, and I know that a lot of the times that we sell properties, we sell them to people that are first-time home buyers, they're coming in, they're, buying them for $1,000, and then we rely on them to fix properties. And a majority of the time, those properties do come out very nice, and people do a good job. And I brought this up before, and I kind of thought about it again. What would take the urban renewal agency to actually take these properties, to put them up to the standard of what they should be, right? Fixing roofs, making the property, fixing rooms, whatever problems that they may have. That way, we're not getting selling the properties for $1,000, relying on them, and then actually selling them for, say, recouping the cost of what it costs to put into the maintenance. But we now have the security that those buildings are up to date. Because you said historically, like those funds, right? We've been at about $1 million. Obviously, the inventory hasn't been spent. Why not take those funds and actually rehab some of the properties?
Well, just to correct you on one thing, I think if you look at our track record over the last few years, we're not selling properties for $1, or as you mentioned, $1,000.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, the housing stock has also gone up significantly over the
Our
last
sale
couple of
prices
years.
have been considerable in the last several years.
Can I break in on this? 'Cause
My concern about doing rehabs before we sell is the staffing that we need in order to put together bid specs, handle the bids, manage the construction projects. I think when you're in a hot housing market like we are now, I think we're able to sell the properties as is and still sell them at a pretty reasonable price.
I just never liked the just leaving it up to somebody to fix the rehab.
Well, they got
the
1
property.
year, and they got a
We-
follow.
Right, but
Bought
we've
back.
extended the certificate of
Right.
occupancy quite a bit. I mean, because you don't want,
There's a lot of buildings out there that were sold a few years ago, and they're still a wreck.
well, that's what I'm saying. Like, why not take that funding and utilize it to rehab those properties? Then you don't have to worry
Right.
about.
Why are we doing that? Why we just cite these people that said, just take the property
Because the
back?
city owns the majority of the properties.
we should claw them back. I think Mark is right. We should claw them back when they don't fix them up in a timely manner. But because we're not flippers, that would be my
Yeah,
answer
yeah,
to your
that's-
question.
I mean,
Because
but
it's
right.
just not our job to fix
We
up
should- we-
properties and flip them at a.
But we are in the real estate business, so what I'm saying is that why leave these dilapidated buildings in a neighborhood for, oh my God, let's say 2 years,
Right.
and we're taking them back?
Right.
Why not help rehab those properties so that people aren't living in an eyesore, okay, and then selling them? Because we are in the real estate business, we sell properties, like, are we not? Like, I'm pretty sure that's our responsibility through the urban renewal agency is to market properties and to sell them. So technically, you wear a real estate agent hat, and so does Gene Allen in those aspects.
Yes.
I guess
We
even.
sell, but we sell as is. If they want to invest their money in it,
But I
let them
get it.
invest it. But
It's
if we
also
invest
still-
it too
still
much
Can I
into
say
rolling
it,
something
windows.
since
Why
I'm
not?
on
like
the,
you said,
on the
I don't
committee?
think we have enough personnel to actually
But
handle
no,
projects
you don't
throughout the
have-
city.
First of all, you don't do that. You hire contractors
Wait,
to do
go
some
ahead.
of those
But
But
projects.
then the cost is going to be really
The-
low.
And
Say you sell a property
So,
for 30,000,
All right.
and it's rehabbed up to date.
All right,
I
let
mean, we
let
have $1
Mr.
million
Beatrice,
in
he's been
funds, why
awful
not?
quiet tonight.
So-
Mr. Beatrice?
No, the only thing I can tell you is I've been on that for the last 2 years, and I know you were on it before, Sam, too. So the biggest thing when the people come on the board, they have to show how much money they have, and they have to show the estimated repair. And a lot of times they're buying these houses for 20,000, and it takes 150,000 in repair to get it to where it's gotta be, and it'd be quite extensive. I do see your point on what it would be, but at the end of the day, I mean, you'd be talking borrowing, sometimes there's 6, 7 houses, I mean, you'd be borrowing $1 million at a time.
And what
you
about
know?
when the real estate market does crash and it's just a huge liability of.
So just leave the
What we
dilapidated
need to
ugly
do, and
No,
I'm
there's
sure-
citations.
They're not, listen to me, those are in urban renewal districts. I mean, it's not like you're
Right,
rehabbing properties
right.
outside of the
Exactly.
border than in the inner city, where people don't want to live next door to a building
But-
that doesn't have windows and so on and so forth, waiting for
Yeah,
somebody to fix it.
listen,
So if we're sitting on $1 million, why not we'll outsource it out to have
Just
somebody
provide
do it?
guidelines. When they purchase it, they have
What
to
you need-
get it
the
done
problem-
by.
They're not doing it.
certain
What
date.
we need,
Go look
and
at
I,
West Utica,
the
someone's
problem,
houses.
what we need in that department, and I can see it for the last 2 years, is what Councilman Williamson said. We need to get a lot stricter with the people that we give the houses to, that if you don't do what you gotta do in a year, we're taking it back and reselling it. That's what we need to
And
do.
that's actually, back
That-
to your first question
Gene Allen.
about what Gene Allen is doing when he doesn't have a big inventory, is going back and looking at projects that have open.
Yeah, cause they're,
That are open files, that haven't gotten their certificate of completion yet, giving them, prodding them into doing the work that they intended to do when they were sold the property, and getting to the point where they're.
you gotta stick to the guns. If you're getting, oh, we don't take anything back.
So how many properties?
We never take any.
We haven't took anything back.
Probably
The
took two.
agency's been hesitant to revert.
Yeah.
back.
Because they want to.
That's what I'm saying, so
shouldn't-
you're
yeah.
really just leaving it up to
Right.
these people to be
That's what we need to do,
slumlords,
Brian.
paying-
You
buying
know
But
that.
how many out of the whole
$4,000.
slew
All
of
right, let's
them?
go one at a
What's that?
time
I'm
here.
sorry, go ahead.
Brian, how many of them are, do we have the numbers of how many are successful versus how many do still have citation codes?
There's only a handful that really haven't
Right.
completed their certificate of completion and are done with the process.
But we need to have a drop
The
dead
vast
date.
majority of them go through the entire process, invest the money that they said they were going to when they made their application,
So-
and are successfully awarded their certificates.
Need to have a drop dead.
So let me ask you a question. So when we sold Charlestown 10 years ago, whatever, to,
Well, the city never took title to Charlestown, I don't believe.
We got, there's something going on there now too.
We
That's-
did not.
that's-
what I'm getting at is, you know, okay, these people that buy these properties from Utica, a lot of them speculate, especially if it's around certain areas, and they sit on them, and they wait, and they wait, and they wait. It's like the house on Lansing Street, with the window wide open for the last 8 years since I've been on the common council. It's been sitting there, bringing it up, I take it back, they're supposed to fix it, they're supposed to do this, can't get a hold of them, can't do this, can't do this. Well, the window's still open. It's been open for 7 years. I'm curious what that window looks like upstairs. It looks like the Ovalstein? Well, that's what I'm getting at. And I know I talked to you about this a couple of years ago, and I know I talked to codes about it, and I get the festive that. Just tell me what I want to hear. And that's it.
I don't believe we only have a handful of
Nah,
properties.
there's a lot more. There's a lot
So, I mean, if you
people-
could provide that, I would appreciate it, but I mean, I've driven around and checked to some of the urban renewal agency properties, and
They're not following.
I found a handful myself, so.
They're not following.
I'd like to, you know what, I'd like to go back and see the houses that we sold in the 2 years I've been on
Yeah,
and see
I'd be
what
curious.
they've done, just for the heck of it.
I'm curious.
I know a lot of them, I know most of them, I like the way it operates when the families come in and we,
They
you
have to be
know,
lead certified when they buy these houses?
what's that?
They gotta be lead certified when they buy these houses?
I don't know that, Mark.
Huh?
I don't know. if they-
Well, I mean, do they have to be
If
lead
you look at
certified
it now-
when they buy these older homes?
And the supplies are
Encapsulated?
sky high. We
Some
had
contracts-
COVID. We
oftentimes
did
the
go through a
contracts
tough
say-
time, so
Right.
hopefully
Right.
we'll be able to.
But we just need,
But
you
you're
need
right.
to have a
Let's
drop
ask
dead
for a
date.
list and maybe we can get on
Yeah,
top
you
of
need
it and
to
see
have-
if we
he
could
needs to- Gene needs to go.
get it kick-started again.
And the mayor's, and I'm on the committee, and the mayor's always on him at the meetings, right in front of us. Did they do it? What did you do? Did you go, you know what I mean? I mean, you're right there. He does ask all the time, and you know what? Maybe shame on me too. Maybe I should go get my dockets and go back and,
Like the whole six projects
see
look
what
different.
we sold and what's fixed. It's been
All right,
2.5 years now.
All right, we'll get back to the budget. Any other budget questions? I think we're done. Thank you, Brian. So we'll be meeting at 4:30 on Wednesday.
I came here today at